Most people wait for motivation. They wait to feel ready. They wait for energy, excitement, or confidence to show up before they act. And when motivation fades, they assume something is wrong with them. They think they lack willpower. They think they're broken. But the truth is quieter than that, and far more important. Motivation was never meant to carry your life forward. Motivation is emotional. It comes and goes. It rises when things feel new and exciting, and it disappears when things feel slow, uncomfortably, or repetitive. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. The problem begins when you build your life around a feeling that isn't stable. Discipline is different. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It doesn't care whether today feels inspiring or dull. Discipline is simply the decision to act based on who you want to become, not how you feel right now. Think about how many times you felt motivated. New goals, fresh starts, strong intentions, and think about how many of those moments faded within days or weeks. Not because you didn't care, but because motivation alone couldn't survive real life. Stress, distractions, fatigue, doubt. All of it slowly drains motivation. Discipline works in the background, quietly, consistently. It shows up on ordinary days, not just the exciting ones. It carries you when motivation disappears, and that's why it wins every time. This isn't about being strict or harsh with yourself. It's not about forcing productivity or living without emotion. Real discipline is calm. It's stable. It's built on trust with yourself. When you practice discipline, you stop negotiating with your future. You stop relying on bursts of emotion to move forward. Most people don't fail because they lack desire. They fail because they rely on motivation to do a job that only discipline can handle. Motivation starts the journey. Discipline finishes it. If you've ever wondered why you keep starting strong but can't stay consistent, this is where the answer begins. But to truly understand why discipline is so powerful, you have to look deeper at how it actually works in real life. And that's what comes next. Discipline beats motivation because it removes decision-making from the moment. When you rely on motivation, every action becomes a debate. Should I do this now or later? Do I feel like it? Is today the right day? That mental back and forth drains energy before you even begin. Discipline simplifies things. It turns actions into routines. It creates structure, so your mind doesn't have to work so hard. You don't decide every day whether to show up. You've already decided, and that decision was made when you were calm, clear, and thinking long-term. This is what makes discipline realistic. It doesn't require high energy. It doesn't require confidence. It only requires consistency. Small actions, repeated daily, become automatic over time. And once something is automatic, it stops, depending on how you feel. Motivation says, act when it feels good. Discipline says, act because this matters. That difference changes everything. Discipline also builds momentum. Each time you follow through, even in a small way, you reinforce your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who keeps promises to yourself. That quiet self-trust grows stronger than any motivational speech. And here's something most people miss. Discipline doesn't mean doing everything perfectly. It means showing up imperfectly. Again and again, it allows room for bad days without letting them turn into quitting points. When you rely on motivation, missed days feel like failure. When you rely on discipline, missed days are just interruptions. You return without drama, without guilt, without starting over. This is why disciplined people don't look stressed all the time. They aren't constantly fighting their emotions. They've built systems that carry them when emotions fluctuate. Discipline also protects you from extremes. It keeps you from burning out when motivation is high, and from disappearing when motivation is low. It creates balance. Once you understand this, discipline stops feeling like restriction. It starts feeling like freedom. Freedom from constantly restarting. Freedom from self-doubt. Freedom from emotional swings controlling your actions. But theory only goes so far. To really see the power of discipline, you have to notice how it shows up in everyday moments. The quiet decisions you make when no one is watching, that's where it becomes real. Discipline shows up in small, ordinary moments, not in dramatic scenes, not in highlight reels. It shows up when your alarm goes off and you don't feel like getting up, but you do anyway. Not perfectly. Just enough. It shows up when you sit down to work, even though your mind feels distracted. When you take a short walk, instead of skipping movement entirely. When you prepare a simple meal instead of ordering out of habit. These moments don't feel powerful, but they are. Motivation wants excitement. Discipline wants progress. In daily life, discipline looks like boundaries. You stop waiting for the perfect mood. You work with what you have. You plan your day around priorities instead of impulses. You finish one important task before reacting to everything else. Discipline also shapes how you think. When you act consistently, your mindset follows. Confidence grows not from positive thoughts, but from evidence, from watching yourself show up repeatedly, quietly, reliably. In relationships, discipline looks like listening even when you're tired. In health, it looks like consistency instead of extremes. In personal growth, it looks like reading a few pages regularly instead of binge learning once a month. These actions don't change your life overnight, but they change the direction of your life, and direction matters more than speed. The key is understanding that discipline doesn't need to be intense to be effective. It needs to be sustainable. The moment discipline becomes punishment, it breaks. Real discipline respects your limits while slowly expanding them. Over time, these small, disciplined actions remove chaos from your life. You feel calmer, more grounded, less reactive, because you're no longer dependent on how motivated you feel to function. But even with discipline, there will be resistance. There will be days when old habits pull you back, when self-doubt gets louder, when consistency feels heavy. That isn't failure. It's part of the process, and learning how to move through that resistance is what keeps discipline alive. There will be days when discipline feels harder than motivation ever did. Days when you feel tired, unmotivated, and unsure whether any of this is working. This is where most people quit, not because they can't continue, but because they mistake discomfort for a signal to stop. Resistance is normal. It means you're changing patterns. It means old habits are losing control. That discomfort isn't danger, it's growth. You will miss days, you will sleep. You will have moments that feel like starting over. You're not. Discipline doesn't disappear because of a bad day. It disappears only when you decide not to return. One of the biggest mistakes people make is turning discipline into self. They believe discipline means being hard on themselves. It doesn't. Discipline is about direction, not judgment. When you fall off, the disciplined response isn't punishment. It's calm correction. You notice what made things harder. Du adgust. Then you continue. Perfectionism is another enemy. It convinces you that if you can't do something fully, it isn't worth doing at all. Discipline rejects that idea. It values showing up, even at reduced capacity. There will also be days when discipline looks like rest, when pushing forward would cause more harm than good. Discipline isn't constant pressure. It's intelligent effort. Self-doubt often gets louder when discipline starts working, because the old version of you feels threatened. That voice isn't truth. It's fear of change. The response isn't emotional battle. It's a calm action anyway. One small step, one choice aligned with your values. That's discipline. Over time, resistance weakens. Not because it disappears, but because your actions prove you don't need its permission anymore. And eventually, discipline stops feeling like something you force and starts feeling like something you are, which leads to the final shift. What life looks like when discipline becomes part of your identity, not just a strategy. When discipline becomes part of who you are, everything simplifies. You stop asking whether you feel like doing the right thing. You already know what matters, and you act accordingly. You stop chasing motivation. You stop waiting for clarity before moving forward. You trust yourself more because you've built evidence through action. Life doesn't suddenly become easy, but it becomes steady. You feel less scattered, less reactive, more grounded in your choices. You measure progress by consistency, not excitement. Discipline creates a quiet confidence, not the loud kind that needs validation. The calm kind that comes from knowing you'll show up, even when it's uncomfortable. Over time, habits compound. Focus improves. Stress decreases. Growth feels natural because it's no longer forced. You're no longer starting over every few weeks. This is how real change happens. Not through emotional highs, not through dramatic moments, but through steady, disciplined action over time. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to wait for a breakthrough. You only need to decide what matters and show up consistently in small ways. Motivation will come and go. Discipline stays. Ask yourself one simple question. What is one thing you can commit to, regardless of how you feel? Not everything, just one. Start there, then return tomorrow, and the day after that. That's how discipline quietly builds a life you can trust, and why it will always beat motivation.